Ice Age.
Record of Ragnarok chapter 88, and I honestly can't say that we can have a better chapter than this. This chapter from start to finish is exactly what you would want. We got a ton of lore drops, we got some badass action, and we got to see a ton of prominent characters in prominent moments. So let's get right into it. So we start the chapter with the reveal that there's more than one primordial god. Get this silhouette of all these primordials that we don't get to see yet that may be teased for a final war later on. Gods who were born from the chaos of the beginning. Now, I do believe that they called Gaia from the Greek pantheon a primordial. She was Mother Earth essentially, so she may be one of the primordials, and I'll try to think if her silhouette matches up with any of these. It kind of does look like the middle picture, but I don't think that she's going to be the most prominent of these guys. So there's going to be hella theories going around about who these guys really are. They are the origin of the universe, the beginning of all creation. And we get to see planets in the background. These are the real powerhouses of this verse, which is super cool. The power of the primordial gods was so massive that they self-destructed. Nevertheless, it is said that they returned to the beginning of chaos from the Chronicles of Valhalla. Badass and a ton of hype for people that really want this series to progress past Ragnarok. I think that this might be the confirmation we need. So we get this awesome shot of Odin staring down Beelzebub and Buddha getting ready for their handicap match, 2 versus 1, and they face him off, and Buddha looks at Beelzebub and says, "Resurrection of the primordial gods," and Odin's birds start going crazy. What the hell are you even talking about? Don't you know that the primordials are just legends? You're completely delusional. Why would Lord Odin wish for such a thing? There were ancient gods who once named themselves primordials. If we were to assume those primordial gods even exist, both the heavens and the human world would have been annihilated. But Odin himself doesn't say anything. Beelzebub then says the primordial gods are just myths. To us, the gods, I used to believe that too, until I found that forbidden book. And we find out that Beelzebub found this forbidden book when he was researching Satan for his own means. In the Library of the Underworld, there was this forbidden book that describes the resurrection of the primordial gods. That means the primordial gods really existed at some point, and someone knows how to resurrect them. It also means that those who forbid the practice also exist. Somebody doesn't want them resurrected, somebody does. It's called the Book of Gornir, and unfortunately, most of the book was rotting away. Most of the passages were illegible. However, I found a passage inside that said, when the world tree absorbs the water of life, Odin of the Twin Eyes will offer his own body and the world will return to its primordial state. Damn, incriminated this man right in his face. You see Odin, he's got this blacked out look and he don't give a fuck, honestly, but this is super cool. I'm gonna make videos talking about this one, the world tree, Yggdrasil. What could this mean? What is Odin gonna sacrifice? His own body, obviously, but what will he get in return? Will he become a primordial? Will he just issue in the primordials? Is he crashing out here? Who knows? It's been a long time since I read it, says Beelzebub, so it took me a while to connect the dots. Beelzebub says, well, I may be delusional to think that the content is about the resurrection of the primordial gods, but isn't that a forbidden book with your name written on it? The answer to your long cherished wish, right? Go ahead and tell us about it, Mr. Odin. So Beelzebub is pressing Odin. He extends his weapon toward Odin in a very challenging manner. And Odin, I love this scene so much. Odin literally just smirks and starts laughing. He literally legitimately starts tweaking. Tell us, tell us, tell us, mocking their voice. You maggots are always like this. Where am I? Is this some sort of nest for little birds? And he has this amazing evil laugh, bro. It is one of the most sinister looking laughs you'll ever see. He says, I am the Lord of Madness. I am the Lord of Rage. You bunch of idiots, disappear. And he loads up gun gear. Gun gear looks amazing. It's got this shadowy aura around it. Both Beelzebub and Buddha take a defensive stance and prepare for the attack. Just then you see all these lightning streaks coming down, slamming into the ground near Odin. And Thor appears and he says, what are you doing here? The crows are terrified. We get this awesome panel of Thor, and Thor basically gets in between Beelzebub, Buddha, and Odin. He stands right in the middle of all three of them. Buddha and Beelzebub look shocked. Odin then says, Thor, stay out of my way. Thor ignores this, keeps looking forward, and Buddha says, what's up, little Thor? You didn't come here to help Din Din, did you? And Thor says, I'm not trying to help anyone. However, allow me to say one thing. The pride of the warriors who fought in that arena, I will not allow it to be tarnished and desecrated by anyone. Nobody says anything. Odin, Buddha, Beelzebub are all shown, no words. Until Ragnarok is finished, life and death will be decided in the arena. That is the courtesy that we as warriors must show to our fallen enemies. And Buddha says, I'd never heard that before. Little Thor is surprisingly hot-blooded dude. Alright then, I got it. And we get this insane panel of Thor extending Mjolnir towards his own father and says, isn't that right, father? Odin looks back at him and then says, until Ragnarok is finished, alright then. So Thor literally just came in here and laid down the law with nobody going to challenge his authority. This motherfucker just came in and said, you guys aren't fighting unless you want smoke with me. I love this dude. And he's actually stated to be the strongest in the Norse pantheon. So is he stronger than Odin? I mean, it says it. Maybe Odin has other supernatural abilities that weren't included in that. Who knows? The only one that was ready to challenge here, or wasn't satisfied with this reconciliation, was Beelzebub. His eyes go white and he says, don't fuck with me. This story isn't over yet. And he starts lunging at Thor and Odin. Bro is gonna get slammed. If he fought both of them, there's no chance whatsoever, especially with some dialogue we get later on. He says, I'll make you listen even if we have to use force. And Adamas appears in his adamantine mech suit and he says, enough. And Beelzebub stops in his tracks, which is a little bit weird, but I think it's more so because of their ties than, power, obviously. And we also see Kintoki, who says, is there something wrong, Buddha? We then get this awesome panel of Kintoki in front of Odin, then Thor, Beelzebub, Buddha, and then Adamantine at the back. With Beelzebub looking back at Adamas, Buddha looking forward at Kintoki, Thor looking back in a defensive stance getting ready for Beelzebub's attack, and Odin staring a hole through Kintoki. Beelzebub then says, don't get in my way, Adamantine. If you attempt to interfere, I will erase you. And Adamas, kind of plays at his heartstrings with Hades and says, don't tarnish the godly dignity that Mr. Hades has shown. You're the one who told me that. You're usually cool as the ice of hell. You're the gloomy Lord Beelzebub. And Adamas actually goes over with his hand and physically grabs the staff of vibration. And it looks like his power was actually enough to crack the skull. He literally grabbed it with so much force that the skull starts cracking. But actually, hold on. It's not that he's cracking the staff, it's that his own hand is cracking. So he's willing to sacrifice his own limbs to stop Beelzebub here. Beelzebub obviously knows he'd slam it, but Adamas might be a little stronger than we thought. He says, don't be a clown, you dumbass. And Beelzebub ends up hearing the reason, ends up laying down his weapon. Odin and Thor just look back without saying anything, like, yeah, you tried it, motherfucker. And they continue to walk away. But as they're walking away, Odin stares a hole through Kintoki. He never breaks eye contact with him. As his ravens walk away, it's an awesome panel, and Kintoki doesn't say anything back, but he looks right at Odin as well. Buddha then says, hey there, Kinchan, you really never stop moving, do you? Good timing. Kintoki says, is that so? What's up with that old man? Was he that scared of me or something? Why was he glaring at me that much? And Buddha says, that's Odin. I think that maybe he didn't like you because I told him you were exploring Tartarus. Kintoki gets surprised, like, why the hell would you tell him that? And he sits on the ground. Well, whatever. However, I'm done with the underworld. Buddha says, is that so? Then how were things down there? And here's where we actually are going to find out what happened in Tartarus. Kintoki says, it was no good, you see. The guards of Tartarus are demonically tough. I'm never going to be able to break in and make contact with that prisoner god. Interesting. So the guards are stronger than Kintoki, apparently. Not something I thought was going to happen, but that's pretty interesting. Maybe this will play a part at some point when they do break him out. Somebody's going to have to go down there and beat them. I don't think Kintoki has his Volund or anything, though. Also, it's pretty interesting that as a human, he can go down into, Tartarus. So a ton of things we still have to find out. Buddha says, I see how it is. I feel like I want to meet Siegfried even more now. And he calls him Siggy. Kintoki says, nope, like I said, I can't do it. I can't do it. And Buddha says, well, whatever. Let's go eat some candy then. Tell me the details over some candy. So as they're doing their little shtick, Beelzebub's looking at them very unimpressed. They get into a whole talk about like, oh, candy gives you cavities and shit like this. And Buddha's like, I'll brush my teeth. Don't worry about it. And he says, all right, then, bye. So he's got a nickname for everybody. And Beelzebub, though, he really wants a fight. So what I'm gathering from this is that I think Beelzebub wanted to die. I think that's why he was going after Thor and Odin. He wants to die. His mission has not changed, even though, he respects humanity. And, obviously we found out about the Hades respect. He says, Buddha, don't you hate me? Buddha says, hate you? He says, you already know, don't you? The one who planted that Hajin seed in Zero Fuko was me. So in the spoilers, it initially seemed like Buddha already knew this, but Beelzebub's the one that just straight up tells it. And he kind of boasts about it. Adamas sees what's happening. He's like, hey, Beelzebub, like, let's just leave. He grabs him on his shoulder. Beelzebub continues, you must hate me so much that you want to tear me apart and murder me. Buddha's like, is that so? Ah, that's the story, huh? And he goes into like a face-off with Buddha, walks toward him right in his face. And Buddha looks very serious here, and he still has the remnants of the misery cleaver in his hand, the little stick. Beelzebub, in my interpretation here, I think that he thinks Buddha's gonna try to kill him, and I think that he's trying to allow it to happen actually, because he just closes his eyes, but all that happens is that Buddha just slams him over the head with the stick. He just hits him, and it's just like a father smacking the back of your head or something. Kintoki and Adamas are surprised. They were both flanking in this awesome panel, mind you. Kintoki behind Buddha and Adamas behind Beelzebub. And Buddha then has a smile on his face and says, well, is this enough? He entrusted this to me, talking about the stick, the misery cleaver. Zero was the one that taught me that it is inevitable that hatred will rise in the heart. But if I allow my hatred to get the better of me, it will be the same as betray Zero. We will walk the path of light together. That's what I said. That's a promise I made to Zero, and that's the reason why I don't hate you. It's better this way, right? The spoilers made it out like he was asking him to resurrect him. I like this way better. That wasn't the case at all. I don't even think they should be able to be resurrected after they lose in Ragnarok because of the green crystal thing, so I'm definitely very happy about that. He was just saying that he's not gonna desecrate his own promise. He's not gonna fucking show hatred and be a hypocrite, essentially. So Beelzebub is kind of upset. He says, you are truly a very complicated guy in the end, but maybe someday, if you feel like it, you can come back and kill me. You probably would be able to do it. Very interesting line for Ragnarok scaling. We really never get statements like this. But Beelzebub seems to think that Buddha may have enough power to do it. And I'm very interested to see what kind of weapon Buddha's going to be using going forward. Because don't forget, his staff was broken. He has this misery cleaver remnant. Does that mean he'll still be able to draw into the Nirvana sword? Will he still be able to Valund with Zero somehow? No idea. We didn't really get to see what he was going to try to use against Odin. But I do definitely think Buddha has some means of fighting still. Now, you may be able to argue Beelzebub might just be trying to bait, Buddha into trying to kill him. He doesn't really know. He's just hopeful that Buddha might be able to do it. But it's a very interesting question nonetheless. And Buddha just says, haha, you're a weird guy, and then just walks away. We then finally cut back to the arena. Get this awesome pan-in shot of the Valhalla arena with the fight between Susanoo and Okita ongoing throughout all this madness. We get some crazy shots where those two start rushing at each other, and we also get to see Aphrodite back in the crowd with Shiva, Jack the Ripper with his Valkyrie, Brunhilde and Gold, who still haven't had much dialogue in this entire fight. And we get this one of my favorite panels of the chapter is Okita, thrusting his sword and Susanoo countering. It's just a really cool panel in my opinion. We see that they keep countering each other. They're like straight up, they're such a good match. Susanoo launches Okita into one of the buildings. Okita uses the momentum to jump back off the building and launch another attack. It's really, really cool. Okita's face looks really awesome. Susanoo barely dodges. Okita grabs on his katana with two hands, uses Ryubi Ken Dragon Tail sword and slices, but Susanoo counters with his own. His eyes go white. There's this huge impact frame in the middle of them. We actually find out that this sword slash was the first slash to somewhat land, and it lands on Okita. Susanoo draws first blood as a small scar forms on Okita's face and drops of blood start leaking down. Okita then realizes this. The crowd starts going crazy. They can't even tell what's happening. They can't even see what's happening. What an amazing sword fight. These two men are super hard to follow. The sword god and the demon child are fighting to the death. Susanoo's godly myriad swallows Okita's sword strikes that wield the godly speed, says Heimdall, and Okita reacts and counterattacks even to that. But Susanoo dodges and counterattacks even further. The clash between the strongest Godslayer and the strongest Manslayer. This is the peak of bloody battles between swords. We then get Hermes, who says, I don't want to get distracted even if it's for an instant. Big Brother's so surprised his soul left his body, so of course Hermes can see all the movements as usual. Zeus then gets in his buff form and says, swords are cool, but what I really want are fists. We then see Anubis, who looks like a straight up dog, like he's drooling from his mouth. He says, I'm so hyped I can barely wait. That's just so amazing. Man, I knew I shouldn't have given up my turn. I can't get enough of that human. It's floating all the way there. The best smell of all. The best and strongest, the smell of death. And we get a shot of Okita. We then see Sasaki and Musashi talking about the sword stances. And Sasaki says, as far as we can see, every single one of them is there. That god Susanoo has mastered all sword techniques in all schools created by mankind throughout history. He can comprehend them all. And perhaps he's reached the peak of all those styles. His Valkyrie says, sword god, he's more like a metamorphic sword. Sasuke says, I can't get enough of it. Now let's see how you can win against that god. Show me. The strongest of the Edo period, Okita Tsuji. So I love this dialogue from Sasuke because it's not showing any signs of inferiority to these swordsmen. He's just intrigued and he wants to see the strongest of the Edo period, how he reacts to it. I love this. Susanoo says, your Ryubi Ken Dragon Tail attack from a moment ago was an amazing technique. It was majestic. You were gonna chop my arms off in that counterattack, says Okita. How can you say that? That was so cool. So they're both glazing each other, basically, both super impressed. And Okita has this giant smile on his face and says he's having so much fun. Shinchin Gumi is shown, and they say if he loses concentration even for a moment, he'll die instantly, you know. Kondo says, I doubt he's even afraid of death at this point. Every day was a battlefield. Death was always next to him. For us, the Shinchin Gumi, fights to the death were our everyday life. Susanoo says, you're still laughing. That's why you're the captain of the first unit of the Shinchin Gumi. The one and only Okita Tsuji against the infinite positions, the godly myriad. And Okita goes into this demonic stance. The stance of the smiling demon was formless. And he looks like a beast. It reminds me of Baki, like when he uses those like formless attacks. He's so fluid in his movements. The crowd's confused though. They're like, what happened? He lowered his guard. Musashi says, is that the formless stance of Yaigu? Sasuke says, no, it's similar though, but that's not correct. It's possibly not a form learned somewhere else. In order to survive the hell of the Bakumatsu period, he naturally acquired that through fighting to the death with many samurais of the period. That's what I believe. Naturally? Yeah. Susanoo is sweating now and he's like, oh, would you look at that? I'm loving this. This is about to get wild as hell. And Okita says, me too. Motherfucker is cold, bro. He's about to get wild. He's got that scar on his face. He says, here I go with this amazing panel. His face is so serious now. The air around me has changed. The piercing sword pressure. And Okita, you start seeing him flowing into his movements. He rushes after Susanoo, but it's so smooth and fluid. Susanoo cannot even see what's happening. He literally can't see the attacks, but somehow still reacts. His instincts are just that good. He blocks the initial slash. The second one, he's got him on the back foot. 2 more sword slashes come. Susanoo's barely blocking. He gets prepared to counter. Sasuke says there's one thing that Okita has that surpasses that god. That's his countless near-death experiences. And you see that Okita actually this time is able to land for the first time on Susanoo with a sword thrust that pierces Susanoo's left arm. Susanoo says that's Okita's sword, and boom, you see this giant slash where blood splatters everywhere to end the chapter. Okita has cut through Susanoo's arm. We don't know if he lost his arm. We don't know what happened. That's the final page, but what a chapter. Loved every second of it. Action packed on both fronts. Theory videos galore coming. So make sure to stay tuned, subscribe for all that information, and I will see you guys in the next one. Make sure to let me know what you think about this chapter down below.